This trail goes through old-growth white pines. So excited to see them. You can see about 75 white pines on this trail. There used to be many, many more of these trees, but they were almost all logged in the 1880s. Why were the white pines so popular for logging? Number one, they are large with tall trunks and branches only at the top, perfect for making masts for ships. And number two, they float, so they can be transported down a river in the spring. This is the biggest white pine on this trail. It is 37 meters high and 1.1 meter in diameter at the bottom. All the white pines in this forest are the same age. I'll tell you more about that later, but this one is biggest most likely because it had very good growing conditions. White pines have a hard time getting a start in life. The seeds are tiny and usually cannot penetrate the layer of dead leaves to put down roots. And if they do manage to take hold and start to grow, they need a lot of sunlight in their first 10 to 20 years. What is this moss-covered mound? It is a felled white pine from about 130 years ago, and amazingly the decay process still has not been completed. These are the remains of the logging camp from the 1880s. There's really not much to see here anymore, but 140 years ago people lived here, cutting down trees and floating them down several rivers to Quebec City and then onto a ship to England. So how did these white pines take hold in this location? Well, the answer is just so interesting. It turns out the key is a forest fire, and one that is hot enough to burn off the dead leaves on the ground so the seeds take root, and hot enough to kill off enough of the overhead trees to let sunlight in. The white pines along this trail are all about 230 years old, and guess when there was a forest fire of just the right strength? In 1790. This all raises an interesting question. If it is so hard for white pines to become established, what happens along this trail when these large trees die and fall down? Well, unless the right conditions happen in the next 80 years or so, there will be no more white pines here. There's something I was wondering about. Why are these trees here? Why weren't they logged with the rest of them? Well, back in the 1880s, these trees were the babies, only about 90 years old and not worth logging. Thankfully, they are here today for us to see. The booklet I found at the start of the hike was the source of the information in this video, and there is much more in there to discover. Here's a map of the Highway 60 corridor in Algonquin Park, and here is where the Big Pines Trail is, 40 kilometers from the West Gate and 16 kilometers from the East Gate. You will need a daily vehicle permit for the Highway 60 corridor to park here, and this can be purchased on the Ontario Parks website. This trail is 3 kilometers long and has some small hills with a total ascent of about 50 meters. It is not the trail to take for fall color viewing, but it is amazing to see these beautiful trees while they are still here. This hike can be combined with the Lookout Trail next door, and that trail does have an incredible lookout over the park.